Today, I don't want you to fly, but I want to do a theoretical lesson on redispatching, or reclearance, and ETOPS. These two concepts are frequently used in the 777's dispatching algorithms, so you have to know them like the back of your hand. It's not just about flying gear but also being smart about it. Redispatching, or reclearance, is a way of lessening the legally required fuel load for long-range flights, while increasing zero fuel weight. This helps when passenger luggage cannot be taken aboard because you hit the M.2. It also helps with a more efficient flight because less fuel is carried around that will, most probably, not be used. Now, SimBrief doesn't do redispatching, so we have to do it manually. First thing to understand is that the only value you can work with is the contingency fuel. On long flights, this is 5% of the trip fuel, which is quite high after the 7-hour threshold. Because trip fuel does not take into account reserves or alternate, there could be a smart selection of 2 different flights that could add up to a smaller contingency than doing the whole flight in one take. The flights would have to be on the same flight plan, of course, so that you don't waste fuel on repositioning. Let's say we want to do a flight from Istanbul to Malé in the Maldives with 300 packs on board. The fuel breakdown looks like the picture shown. We have a block fuel of 77.8 tons. Contingency is 2,943 kilograms. But the law requires contingency fuel only for the filed plan at hand. If I only file a plan to Dubai, for example, I get a lower contingency fuel requirement at takeoff. The difference in contingencies is my fuel margin gain. 1.1 tons is about 11 to 12 additional packs that can be taken on board in Istanbul. To calculate my redispatching fuel correction, I need to choose a fix on the route that is common to both routes and close to my decision airport, Dubai, in this case. I am choosing Degno as it's the last common point between the route to Dubai and the route to Malé. The calculation is simple. You need enough fuel at the selected fix to legally continue to the destination airport, final reserve, and alternate for that final destination. So the calculation is that minimal fuel at Dinro is trip from Degno to Malé, plus the reduced contingency, plus final reserve and alternate at Malé. That is 42.345 tons over Degno. Minimum. 45 minutes before Degno, you should check the fuel prediction, and if it's above this minimum, you can request that further clearance. Now, what is the fuel save achieved? Well, the original flight plan predicted a FOB of 47.2 at Degno. I only need 42.245, so the cumulative fuel save for this flight plan using redispatching is 4.85 tons of fuel. Of course, I, as the pilot, will use a more conservative value of 4.5 or 4 tons, and that will be subtracted from the block fuel at Istanbul. Instead of 77.8 tons, I can load 73.8 and still get to Malé. The added check is that if you cannot make the minimum fuel at Degno, you have to land in Dubai. Now, ETOPS. ETOPS, or Extended Range Twin Engine Operations, is a means to allow aircraft to fly very far from its nearest suitable airport in case of emergency. Contrary to popular belief, ETOPS has more to do with ground crews than anything else. They are the ones keeping the engines at the rating required by the ETOPS scenario. ETOPS is about what happens if you get into a serious emergency and you are far away from any suitable airport. These areas can be found above the Atlantic, above the Indian Ocean, above the Pacific, or above the Sahara Desert. The ETOPS threshold, the limit when ETOPS scenarios get into effect, is when an aircraft is flying 1 hour of cruise on one engine from a suitable airport. At this point, if the aircraft loses one engine, somehow you have to make sure that the remaining engine can take the hydraulic, the electric, the pneumatic and thrust load to carry this wounded bird to a suitable airport. You make sure of that by maintaining the engines at a higher standard, with the extra cost that comes with it. A usual 777 comes with a 180-minute ETOPS scenario, which means that the wounded bird can fly 3 hours on one engine alone. This is amazing on its own, but there are 777s that are 330-minute rated, which means that they can fly 5.5 hours away from a suitable airport. But ETOPS comes with certain checks. There are entry and exit point checks to do, while there is also a minimum fuel at ETP1, equal time point within the ETOPS segment. Critical fuel at ETP1 is 16.7 tons, so we are well above that, even if we correct for redispatching. ETOPS calculation takes into account 3 scenarios: an engine out at cruise, a decompression at cruise, and an engine out with decompression at cruise. The worst fuel scenario is taken into account and given to the pilot. Hope you now have a good idea of what it means to really plan your flight from now on. In the other aircraft you've flown, it was not that important to optimize loadout. Now it is.